All right, tonight our headliner is a returning Sparks speaker, Jennifer Bartlet-Phelps, a Sparks member and she's the owner of Alter Ego Imaging, a photography studio specializing in boudoir and modern women's portraiture. She strives to help her clients reconnect with their sexuality and sense of self-confidence. Jennifer is also a fine artist, an author, and a workaholic. She has a little urban farm where she raises chickens, rabbits, and has a sizable garden, too. She loves meeting new people, learning what makes them tick. She believes that adventure can be found in everyday experiences and tries to harness that philosophy in herself and in her children. Please, let's give a warm Sparks welcome to Jennifer as she takes the stage.
I am a failure. I'm not good enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm such a fraud. How many times have you heard those words run through your head? How many times this month, this week, today even? I have failed in this life in many ways. I've failed friends and family members. I've failed clients and coworkers. Just last year, I failed in my marriage. And I fail my kids in some small way almost every single day. I started my first business at the age of 23, and it failed in the first 3 years. After it failed, I was forced to file bankruptcy. And I remember sitting in that bankruptcy hearing, tears streaming down my face as I sat across the table from clients whose contracts I was unable to fulfill, their eyes boring into my soul. After that, I decided to become a stay-at-home mom. And I made that decision based on many factors, as all moms of small children do. But the primary factor behind that decision was fear. I was too afraid of failing again. I stayed home with my kids for 5 years. And while I gained a lot from that experience, I also lost something. I was so immersed in taking care of my family that I lost the most important thing I have. I lost my sense of self. I lost Jennifer as she was before she became a wife and a mom and a caregiver. I was so busy loving everyone else as best I could that I had forgotten how to love myself. So why am I telling you this story? Because during those 5 years, the voices in my head had grown to a roaring level. I was afraid to admit how lost I was feeling. I didn't want anyone to see how broken I had become. And I didn't want to admit it to myself. I was missing something very important. I was missing vulnerability. Very few of us relish the idea of being vulnerable. But that vulnerability is so important. We all fail sometimes. But by allowing others to see that failure, we become more human to them and to ourselves. We become more connected to them and more connected to ourselves. Vulnerability equals growth. And I would also pose that vulnerability equals love. Love, because vulnerability allows us to become more connected to other people. And connection is the stepping stone to love, whether that connection and love is with another person or even just with our own selves. If we shine a light into the dark places, don't we see new things? Or at least see them differently than we did before? I want you to think back to when you were a small child. The darkness looming in the cracked closet door always held really terrifying and scary things. But if you turn the light back on, you would see that that thing crawling out of the bottom of the closet door was just a balled-up piece of clothing. And that glint of a monster's eye was really just your favorite toy sitting on the shelf within. Every time we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we gain more insight into who we are. That insight turns into acceptance. And acceptance becomes forgiveness for what needs letting go of, joy for what needs celebrating, and tears for what needs grieving. All of these deepen our understanding and, in turn, our love for ourselves. I truly believe that loving yourself is the hardest love to find and keep a hold of. It's the hardest because we tend to be very critical of ourselves. We tend to concentrate on the negatives, and we forget to look at the positives. In my case, I let the stares of those clients and the thoughts that I figured were going through their heads about me infiltrate who and what I know myself to be. I want you to think about how, when you have a child, the love that you feel for them is instant and unconditional. It never ceases, and yet, I think we forget that we ourselves deserve that same kind of love from ourselves. When we're dealing with their failures, we treat it with kindness and grace. We tell them we love them no matter what, that they'll do better next time, that everyone makes mistakes. And yet, do we offer that same kindness and grace to ourselves when we mess up? When the other people in our lives that we know need our help, don't we drop everything to help them? But what about when you need something from yourself? Do you drop everything to do what your inner self needs? Are you even connected enough with yourself to know when your inner self is screaming for help? Do you let the shitty committee in your head continue their dialogue even after you've recognized that it's happening? This is why we need to be vulnerable. It reminds us we're human. And it reminds us that as humans, we deserve to be kind to ourselves. This is why we have to shine a light in the dark places. How can we learn to love what we are too afraid to look at and experience, and what we're too afraid to show to other people? How can we gain clarity and perspective on anything if we hide it away in the dark? I want you to be able to look in the mirror every single day and know that you are worthy. I want you to be able to say, I love who I am. And honestly, I want that for myself, and there are days that that is a struggle. So to help us all on this journey, here are 3 ways to practice vulnerability. The first is to be honest. It sounds simple enough, but we all tell a lot of little white lies in any given day. How are you? Fine. Half the time you're not actually fine, but that's the answer we give because it's what's expected. Are you familiar with the saying, fake it till you make it? It's total crap. When you fake it, you make it harder to be honest with others and harder to be honest with yourself. When someone asks how your week was, it is perfectly okay to be honest. I lost my biggest client this week. It wasn't amazing. Or whatever it is that happened to you that week. Because guess what? Chances are they've been through the same thing. And even if they haven't, you just opened the door for them to answer with an honest answer instead of a fake one, which again creates connection. Now, I'm not saying you should word vomit negativity all over them. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. A simple, honest answer is all that's really required. Tell your story. Why do you do what you do? Why do you approach things the way that you do? What are the trials that have brought you to this place in life? Speak your truth. Someone is listening who can relate. Your story is part of who you are. It's part of what makes you tick, and it's what makes you human. Embracing your story is the first step in embracing yourself. And lastly, celebrate your failures. Not many of us comparatively know what it feels like to win a gold medal, but we all know how it feels to lose a race. Failure is the thread that sews us all together. Celebrating those failures brings them into the light. When you celebrate them, do it by taking stock of them and finding the positive in them. When my first business failed, I learned countless things about business, but I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that I put too much of myself into that business, which is why I lost so much of myself when it went under. I learned that I'm stronger than I think. And I learned that I can face my failures head on and still come out the other side. Shine a light on the dark places. Let those around you see the value in your failures, and you will in turn see the value in yourself. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself to really see you. It's only by seeing ourselves fully that we truly learn to love and accept ourselves for exactly who we are. Thank you.